All right, it is 3:01. Thank you, Jessica. Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to have you here. We have a jam-packed webinar today, so that's why I am getting started just a minute after the hour. For those that I may not know, my name is Lomo Phillips. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Events and External Relations Manager here at the Link Learning Alliance. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you today to kick things off at Keeping the Momentum from Summer 2021, Accelerating Expanded Learning for High Schoolers. I know you're not here to hear from me today, so before I hand it off to our wonderful speakers, I do have just a couple of brief housekeeping notes. We want to make sure that you have as much interaction with the panel as possible. We're going to be sharing a lot of great information, so please use the chat function to share insights, comments, ask questions throughout the webinar, but we will have dedicated time towards the end for Q&A with the audience. That does mean please stay muted if you are not speaking. We're going to be sharing a plethora of resources throughout this webinar. We will be dropping those in the chat throughout, but in case you forget to click on a link, no worries at all. We will be sharing them all in a follow-up communication along with the recording. And finally, if you experience any IT issues at all, go ahead and message yours truly. Message me at Lomo Phillips, and I'll be happy to help you out. So with that, I'm going to hand things off to Ann Stanton.
Thank you, Lomo, and I'm really pleased to join in the welcoming of everyone to the webinar today. We're really looking forward to a lively, interactive discussion with all of you. I'm Ann Stanton. I'm the president of the Link Learning Alliance, and I am really honored to be here in the company of colleagues from the Partnership for Children, Youth, and some amazing educational leaders and young people from the Link Learning field in California. For those of you who might not be familiar, Link Learning is an approach to education that helps young people discover their passions, to gain confidence, and the supports that they need to thrive in high school, and to graduate with the experiences, the coursework, the skills that prepare them for success in college and career and civic life. Expanded learning is an aligned strategy because it's designed to extend those opportunities beyond the traditional school day. When delivered together, we really believe each is amplified to ensure an even more powerful student-centered learning experience that's available to all young people. And these mutually beneficial strategies, right, the framework of Link Learning that helps achieve priorities at the very heart of expanded learning, happen through strong and meaningful relationships between young people and adults, student-centered educational experiences that connect the classroom to community and students to their communities and communities to their students, opportunities for college and career-oriented learning that build young people's social capital, their resumes, and offer professional relationships through work-based learning, internships, and accelerated college opportunities. So all of this is rooted, our conversation today, in the experiences of last summer, and also over a decade of learning that is collective to these group of amazing leaders. And I think today's discussion is really intended to offer some very practical strategies for leveraging unprecedented public dollars in service to high school, high quality, expanded learning experiences for young people who are in our high schools across California. Today's conversation also marks the release of a wonderful new report from Partnership for Children and Youth, which focuses on examples of and lessons learned from the K-12 expanded learning programs in California during the past summer, which Jessica Gunderson, a great colleague and policy analyst with the partnership, will walk you through shortly. But I want to just take a moment to explain why our organizations are coming together today to focus on high schoolers specifically as it relates to expanded learning time. And as you're going to hear from Jessica, compared to the elementary school level, where there were just bright, shining moments that were pretty expansive, high school learners were often left out in large part of summer learning opportunities. But the pandemic has disproportionately impacted young people between the ages of 14 and 18, where they're making some really significant transitions. They're starting high school. they're in the thick of their high school experience, or they're making the transition to post-secondary or career. And while overall there really was a much smaller focus on how do we use those dollars creatively in service to the high school experience, we also did see like incredible innovations that brought linked learning and expanded learning frameworks together in ways that engaged young people and produced really positive outcomes. And that's what we're here to share with you today and help people imagine together, how do we scale and expand those opportunities, not only in the summer, but throughout the school year. So I'm really excited to be here with incredible leaders, and you'll see that for yourself. And Sandra Ayala Padilla, an amazing young woman from Fresno Unified School District, who will discuss how her experience in linked learning brought expanded learning more vibrantly into her high school experience over the summer. Our hope is that this is really a conversational session. So please do us the great favor of sharing your voice and your questions in the chat throughout the session. And we've reserved particularly the last half of this webinar session for a real panel discussion with your questions fueling that. So with that, I hand things over to my colleague, Jessica, with the Partnership for Children and Youth, who'll be facilitating the rest of today's dialogue. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Anne, and good afternoon to everyone out there. We thank you for your time and your interest. Again, my name is Jessica Gunderson with the Partnership for Children and Youth. And I'm particularly excited, to Anne's point, we've been working on a report on summer learning programs for the past few months, which we just released this morning. So I'm going to provide a little bit of background on the report, a few of the very highest level findings, but the most important stuff in our report came from practitioners on the ground serving kids and serving the adults that serve kids. So we're going to move into those experts as soon as we can. For those of you that have not heard of the Partnership for Children and Youth, we're an intermediary organization that provides both capacity building and policy and advocacy to increase expanded learning and a range of wellness opportunities. So let's talk about why we're here today. Anne alluded to this. We can move on to the next slide. California has more dedicated and flexible resources for summer learning than it ever has, or at least in my lifetime. And this dedication of funding for summer happened both with the federal and state stimulus. So you can see a range of funding on the slide. And what I want to call your attention to is there were two huge investments in summer just in 2021 alone. So we can look at the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, which set aside $4.6 billion. And summer is one of the many strategies under that funding stream. You can also look at the American Rescue Plan Act, of which California received $13.7 billion, and 20% of that has to go to summer school tutoring, counseling, and mental health services. And this is on top of, which you can see in the orange there, on top of stimulus from last year that could fund summer programs, and then the existing funding sources we had for summer prior to that. What I want to also mention, as Anne mentioned, that often high school students were left out for expanded learning and summer, is in the past, there were little to no resources for summer programs for high school students. The vast majority prior to the pandemic went to elementary students. And I just want to call attention to the fact that another funding source, which you see at the bottom, the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program, which is a new funding source for summer as well, prioritize K through sixth prioritize. So again, high school students are left out. So something worth thinking about. So on to the next slide. So with more resources than ever, we were really interested in how are school districts making this investments? How were summer programs different or similar than in years past? And what lessons could we learn this summer that we can take into both the school year as well as future summer planning? So how did we go about this? First, we identified 24 districts and interviewed them and looked at their data from summer. And this was a very diverse set of districts that represented all regions in the state of California, all sizes, from a one school district to tens of thousands of kids. For the first time also, AB 86 required that school districts report on summer and expanded learning. So we had a data set for the first time to look at some of the statewide numbers. And lastly, we did a media analysis across the largest California media markets between March and August to really learn about what was going on in local communities when it came to summer and summer learning. So I just wanted to call attention, my colleague put the CDE's definition of expanded learning in this chat box. And as you can see, summer is a subset of that. And when I use the term summer learning, and you can use the word summer program or summer school interchangeably, but what is important to note is these are programs that combine academics and a range of both wellness and enrichment supports. So it really often looks more like summer camp than the traditional summer school model that we know. Next slide. So big picture, when we zoom out, we were really excited to see that over 88% of school districts this year offered summer learning programs or summer programs of some sort. And though we don't have data from years past, when you look at previous national surveys on the provision of summer learning or summer programming at all, including summer school, traditional summer school, that number is closer to 70% or less. So we are assuming that maybe more schools did summer than in years past. In our sample, we saw that the majority of districts that we interviewed served more kids. And they served more kids despite the odds. I mean, there were staffing challenges, there were fairly strict ratios, there was still a lot of fear, and schools went above and beyond to serve kids. You'll also see a much more holistic approach to summer learning than we've seen in the past. So you can see here on the table, right? 86% of districts that reported provided wellness service. This just was not the case in years past. So school districts really met the moment and met kids and families and their staff where they were. And they all had a learning and academic component, but they really thought bigger than in years past. We also saw that many districts, for many students and staff, this was the first time they were on school campuses and with their peers for an extended period of time. So over 70% of our districts had some in-person offering. And when you compare this to the spring, that number was closer to 50%, though there's a huge amount of variation across the state. And so with all that, I just want to say, unlike many issues this past year, there was really strong agreement across parents, policymakers, and schools that summer 2021 should prioritize enrichment and wellness. And we can move on to the next slide. And we see that one, you see what districts did and how they invested. Also, there's been nationwide national surveys of parents, and the majority of them prioritize non-traditional enrichment programs and outdoor and physical activities this summer specifically, opposed to academic programs. So that's what parents wanted too. Additionally, you see policymakers, for the first time, summer learning was not like framed as summer school or remediation, but you can look at the governor's press release himself, and he called this the summer of joy. And he really framed it that way. And we heard from our districts that almost all of them utilize that funding to expand the way they think or expand the types of services they had in the summer program. And that's what it was intended to do. And we also heard that many districts were planning for multiple summers, and everyone here on, many folks on this call know that often funding is very unsustainable, and there's a lot of uncertainty about it. And research shows that multiple summers are much more impactful on students. So with all that said, when schools are given targeted multi-year resources and the reporting leeway to pursue broader learning goals, as opposed to just instruction, that's what they do. So I want to give a caveat to the success story, and Anne alluded to this. And what we saw is that too many high school students were really left out when compared to their elementary students. And funding may be one reason, but we believe there are other. Only about a quarter of our districts interviewed which again, there are limitations to the districts that we chose. Only a quarter of them served high school students. So that's a much lower figure than elementary students. And that's why we wanted to prioritize this webinar for the launch of this report, is because we really want to uplift the amazing work being done across the state for high school students. So we can move on to the next slide. The report came out. You can read it. I'm not going to talk about the findings and recommendations because you're going to really bring that to life with our speakers. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panel, which is from Fresno Unified School District, Kristen Borowski, who is the CTE director. And go ahead and take it away, Kristen.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Anne. Hello, I am Kristen Borowski, and I am the Career Technical Education Director of Fresno Unified School District. We serve over 70,000 students, and probably unique to Fresno Unified is the fact that 88.7% of our students come from socioeconomically disadvantaged families. As part of our district, I am sharing first, our first slide is really our district's vision, mission, values, and goals. And why really we're talking about that is those particular mission, vision, values, and goals were adopted the fall of last year in the midst of COVID. And our superintendent and board felt that it was important to use COVID as a way to consolidate and really galvanize our community around the importance of education and how do we work together within the city of Fresno. Anne and Jessica slightly mentioned there was an article that came out with the Link Learning Alliance about a summer like no other. And they talked about the importance of engaging students in the decision-making and making sure that high school students had opportunities during the summer. So our first kind of slide that I'd like to transition to next, our CTE programs actually begin pre-K, TK. They extend through adult school. As we discuss our high school programs today, we focus on upskilling and reskilling opportunities with clearly articulated on and off ramps for all of our CTE programs. They are anchored in industry recognized certifications, opportunities for work-based learning, and alignment with high skill, high wage, and in-demand careers for the Central Valley. We see CTE as a catalyst for workforce development, and we need the business and civic communities to better engage with school districts and post-secondary institutions to make meaningful change for our communities. The QR code that you'll see on the slide sends you to our website for more information about all of our CTE pathways, programs, and courses. The next slide really is about highlights from last year. How many students were involved in CTE programs, our business partners, certifications earned, and our student internships. This was pre-summer, if you will. Many of us on this call believe that learning is more meaningful when it connects with young people and connects them to the world of work. It is why we do what we do. The next slide, if Lomo will share, I want to share a video with you that highlights one of the programs that we offered this summer.
So the camp is basically a project that we've worked on in collaboration with Reedley College, the Clovis RC Modelers, EAA 376, and Fresno Unified School District. The project is basically to provide an introduction to aviation for high school age students. And this is the first aviation summer camp that Fresno Unified's ever done. And the whole idea with this is to begin to get a pipeline of students that are interested in aviation to then transition to Reedley College's 2-year flight science program. The students had a chance to build rockets and fly them. They've flown radio-controlled model aircraft. Today, we gave them their first airplane ride.
Did you have a headset before?
Yeah.
Try that.
It gives them a chance to actually see what they were doing in the simulator translated to the real airplane.
It was fun. He helped me control it, and he let me do it on my own. We went and followed the path, and then we came back down, and he let me land it.
We believe that it'll lead to other camps like this and more opportunities for young people, in our community, particularly from our communities of color that are really not represented currently in the pilot population, or for that matter, in much of the aviation industry.
I really think it was a good experience for me to go on the plane, because now it's like now I want to be it like more. So I'm planning on taking classes for it and stuff. I want to become a pilot one day.
So when we talk about our high school students and giving them opportunities, right, that just relates kind of the focus that we had as a district and a community this past summer. So how do we reconnect and help students stay on track with learning and their aspirations for the future? That is a driving question that we all try to answer. With new resources, elevated public focus, creative, innovative thinking, and problem solving, we can re-engage students and begin to redesign our educational systems to better serve students and ultimately better serve our community. One way that we have continued to move that work forward in Fresno Unified is with the power of partnerships. And this slide shows, right, how we have grown our partnerships over the past several years. For years, our mantra in Fresno Unified was about all students, and all being in all capitals. And we all talked about the value of making sure that all students had opportunities. One of the changes that we made this past summer is that we focused intentionally on our disconnected and historically marginalized student populations, including our African Americans, our special education, our English language learners, and our foster homeless youth. So with our internships this summer, we had 8 strategic partners. We offered more than 550 internships specifically for those 4 student demographics. 400 of them were paid by industry partners. And so with that, as I share kind of our last slide, I want to introduce one of our students from this summer, Sandra Ayala Padilla. She is from McLean High School. And Sandra, can you please share a little bit about your internship experience this summer?
My internship this summer was fun and really interesting for me, especially since my internship was Anthem Blue Cross with NAMI. And NAMI is like the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and especially this year with this pandemic, mental illness has been really hard on all of us. And I know personally, I know a lot of people who struggle with mental illness themselves. So it was nice being taught how to handle these situations. And I myself struggle with mental illness too, and like that helps me and my family and other people themselves.
Thank you, Sandra. So I just want to highlight, and I appreciate her being here today and talking about that. We did, like most other school districts, we offered a skills lab for our CTE courses, not only for our teachers and students, but for our community partners as well. And then, like many, we did have a young engineers camp that was focused on kindergarten through grade 2, that really just focused on communication and problem solving, but using the engineering design process in everything that they did. So with that, I will turn it back over to Jessica.
Thank you so much, Kristen and Sandra, and look forward to asking some more questions. It's amazing what you guys are doing. So with that, I want to turn it over to our Antelope Valley Union High School team. And I have Dwayne Robertson and Betsy McKinstry, who are going to share what they did this summer and during in expanded learning in Antelope Valley. With that, I'll turn it over to Dwayne and Betsy.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Next slide, please. Great. So just a little bit about our district to give you a context of where we are for those of you that are not familiar with it. We are 65 miles from downtown Los Angeles, but you wouldn't tell that by living here. We're typically known as the high desert region. And we cover 1,200 square miles, our district does, and has 8 comprehensive high schools. Primarily, it is a high school district, but we do have a dependent charter that serves a small amount of middle school students. It really, really is important to our particular region that we deal with careers in the STEM fields, specifically in aerospace. Our region is typically also known as the Aerospace Valley. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Edwards Air Force Base, Mojave Desert, basically do so much innovation in this particular area. And so we've had a long history of partnerships with our aerospace community, and really developing, similar to what Kristen said, was a homegrown approach in addressing diversity within those STEM fields. We also should be noted that we have approximately 60,000 people that commute out of the area for jobs. And that's another issue that and a challenge for us that we are trying to address, a very strong work-based learning in our area, as well as career pathways that lead to careers that jobs are actually available within the region. Next slide. So I just want to give you a brief overview of some of the things that we did that were summer programs, but also expanded and extended learning from things that we had really learned prior or during the pandemic. So one of the things that we did and we carried through in some respects in the summer is that we had after-school programs in STEM for our STEM related academies. And those programs were supplemented with industry involvement and mentors from the field, which was mentioned at the very beginning, how important that connection to a community is, and also the professional relationships that happen. And it could happen in experiences that are not necessarily internship based as the strengths of Fresno, but they could be actually the students could actually learn and develop those from other types of experiences. So this particular picture here is one of the Lockheed young engineers that were mentoring our students, and they do a drone competition. And they met actually at the park because Lockheed can't come into the classrooms. And so it was a really good kind of innovative way, or, hey, we're still going to do this. And how can we do this and meet the needs of the kids and also the participation with Lockheed? And so this is really important for our students to see young engineers and young mentors. And, that's and not people that have necessarily been in the industry for a very, very long time, although that's very important. But it is really important for them to see and connect with the younger engineers as they grow those pathways. The second thing we did was that we were offered tutoring by our Link Learning Academy teachers, and we targeted the kids that needed to change their D's and F's. As we know, when tutoring is done by the academy teachers or teachers they know, and the community continues through the tutoring process of Link Learning, that's really important for students as we move forward. We hired former students through the summer, and we currently have hired them now that actually are pursuing higher education goals. But because of the pandemic, many of those students were not on a campus. They were at home, and so we still had that and strong connection with them, and they really helped our students. We just hired 5 more students to help with our academies as well that are pursuing higher education in those particular majors. I'm going to let actually our focus area today is the Math Summer Bridge pilot, and Dwayne has talked specifically to that. But I also wanted to touch on the fact that we are also putting together a SPED pilot And that pilot is really important because we're identifying the SPED students in our academies that are really, really struggling. And we're working in conjunction with the SPED caseworker that is working specifically with the academy teachers so that those students can go on and complete the academy process, which we know is really important. And again, that will be a program that we expand into next summer. Next slide. And then I will hand it over to Dwayne, who facilitated this particular program.
Thank you, Betsy, and good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to the Alliance for inviting us. For the Math Bridge summer program that we did, we actually started planning for this, which was our second semester. So it was January of 2020, right before the big pandemic really took effect. So we had already started planning this for the summer of 2020. So our only change was that we went virtual instead of being in person. So we went ahead with our plans. Our target was the incoming freshmen to our academies, especially our engineering academies, because in speaking with the teachers, there was discussion on the incoming freshmen not having enough math skills to be successful in the engineering classes. So we wanted to focus on those incoming freshmen that were going into our engineering academies. And the other secondary reason for it was that we wanted to give those students that go through this summer bridge program, it would give them the opportunity to get into higher level math classes in their 4 years of high school, which was needed in the engineering and health science fields. So in that program, we had a math teacher co-teach with a CTE engineering teacher, and they collaborated on the lessons and the content. So the content that was taught during the summer on a day in the math class aligned with engineering projects that they did in the afternoon. I worked closely with our district STEM curriculum coordinator for science and math. And we found a UCCI course that we use for the math textbooks and some and the math lessons. As I mentioned, we continue with our plans to do the program. We just switched it to doing it virtual. So the first year that we did it in 2020, it was totally virtual using Google Classroom and through Zoom and Google Meets. And then we continued on with that for this past summer of 2021, where we added 2 additional high schools. So not only did we focus on the engineering classes, we also moved over to the health science, and we had 1 biomed class as well. And the biology teacher co-taught with the math teacher. And the image that you see on the slide, they had guest speakers come as well. And they have the guest speaker there that's working with the students, and they're doing a CSI type of project on blood splatter and how to calculate the distance and things like that. So math and that science went hand in hand. And also with that, we all know how hard it is if you're in an academy or a pathway and you're trying to cohort your classes. One of the most difficult classes to cohort is the math courses, because the students are at different levels. Well, after going through the Math Bridge summer program, they were able to work with counseling, and they actually cohorted those incoming freshmen in a math course, which is really good. So we're happy about that. Next slide, please. And this is one of the lessons that they planned out. What we did was, before school ended in May, we started giving time for the math and the science, or the math and the engineering teachers to meet. We had our own little cohort, and we would meet after school, and we would plan the lessons and align the lessons. So the math teachers worked hand in hand with the engineering teachers and the biology teachers. And day by day, they worked out what was going to be taught, what projects was going to be taught in the engineering class. And then the math teacher created content that aligned to that project. So this is one that is kind of CII type of a project about blood splatter and the angle, and how to detect the angle and get the measurement and things like that. So we're very happy with the success of the program. We're going on year 3 now. So we started with 2 schools in 2020. We had 4 schools in the summer of 2021. And then we're going to add 1 more engineering school and 1 more biomed school for the summer of 2022. And then we have 8 comprehensive high schools in our district. So in 2023, we will have all of our high schools running some type of math and engineering, or math and biomed program. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Betsy and Dwayne. I appreciate really getting to see a lesson as well. So we're going to move on to our Elk Grove Unified School District panel. And I'm happy to introduce Sue Hubbard and Aaron Sipes, who will tag team on this presentation. Take it away, Elk Grove.
Thank you so much. You will see on our first slide here some of the various offerings that we had for our summer learning program. We really had kind of a 3-prong approach available for our high school students. So we had some work experience opportunities. In just a moment, I'm going to hand it over to Sue, and she's going to give you some more information about that. We had our traditional credit recovery and course acceleration opportunities. So those are the credit-based courses that students were able to take. That's a little more of the traditional summer school that Jessica was referencing earlier. And then the other piece of it that was new this summer was our enrichment and engagement workshops. And this was a little bit more of that sort of summer camp feel to it. And these were done in person. Students had the option of attending any and all enrichment opportunities that were offered at their school site. We had a combination of programs going on every campus. And so teachers designed their own workshops based on what they heard from students that they'd be interested in, and also what the teachers were really passionate about. It could have been, during distance learning, I didn't have the opportunity to do hands-on science labs, and I want to make sure I provide that for my students. Or it could have been something, we're going to do some creative writing activities. It could have been enrichment of any kind, really. It didn't necessarily have to be academic support. You can kind of see the categories there in the chart. So our wellness activities included social emotional learning activities. It could have been mindfulness, yoga, and it also included physical fitness. So opportunities to, we had some post-COVID fitness classes going. We had pickup basketball going. We had opportunities for students to do weight training and dance and all kinds of different activities going. In the enrichment category, we had a lot of visual and performing arts. We also had some cultural classes and social opportunities for students to reconnect with peers and do some hands-on activities and get creative. Our transition activities were primarily focused on our incoming 9th graders and getting them acclimated to the high school campus. But one thing that was unique to this summer is we realized a lot of our incoming 10th graders had not yet been on campus because they spent their full freshman year as in a distance learning setting. So we did have some transition activities available for our sophomores as well if they had not yet been on campus. We had academic enrichment that could have included things like AP support or extended opportunities. I mentioned the creative writing. There was some poetry slam and things like that that went along with some creative writing. And then also academic support. So it could have been similar to what Dwayne was just describing, like some of those bridge programs. We had students who perhaps took Spanish 1 in a distance learning format and didn't have as many opportunities to practice with the language, and they just squeaked by, and we know they're going to be scheduled for Spanish 2 next year. And we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to really hone those skills and have a little more conversational time. And so that was some targeted supports. And then finally, we had some leadership and career development courses. And that's what you see the photo there. Our fire science academy hadn't had the opportunity to get out on the truck because they've been in distance learning. And so some of those were components that maybe would enhance what they had been learning during the school year or what they were going to be learning the following school year to get them excited about that. And so I will hand it over to Sue to give you a little more information about the work experience opportunities as well on the next slide.
Cool. Thank you, Erin. All right, so our summer internship program was pretty robust this last year, and 2 of the programs that we've had were ones that we did in the past, and we were able to continue them even through COVID. And then we had a new experience that I believe Erin brought to our department that was really excited and really opened up opportunities for a lot of our students. The first one we want to talk about was Lennar Home Building Internship, and it's really a hands-on building trade experience for our students. Students actually participate in application, interview, safety orientation. They would go to different workshops at different schools, even after school, and learn how to drill, hammer, tile, all of the different things that they would need to know once they got onto the work site. And that was their work experience. Then they would actually apply, and they had the opportunity of doing a 4-week internship from 7 to 3:30. That was a paid position for the students. And we had 20 of our students actually participate in that from 5 of our different high schools. And we have 9 comprehensive high schools here in Elk Grove. The other one that was really cool, and this was the new one that came this last year, was a summer youth internship, and it was really working with our elementary school students. And this was really exciting because students did do an application interview. They had to go through an orientation, attend weekly staff meetings, and they did a 4 to 5 week internships at the different elementary schools. We had 24 different elementary schools that they worked at. And Erin, there was about 3 to 4 kids that went to each school. 98 students participated at from 10 of our high schools, which means that we also our alternative schools were participating, and it was both targeted to our 10th and 11th grade students. And this was really exciting because our district is looking at adding in an education pathway, and after students have had this opportunity, we've seen a lot more interest, and I think that that's really going to help funnel that new pathway. So if you go ahead and click, and I'll let you know about the last one. The other one we've done for a couple years now, and it's called Elk Grove Civic Summer. And this is a really cool opportunity for students to get to know the governance of Elk Grove and how the city actually works. Once again, it's through application and interview. But the neat part about this is the students go through a 2-week seminar where they work on work-ready practices, they learn about civic awareness, and they get to hear from different speakers. So they get to hear from the mayor and different people at the Civic Center and learn about how our governance actually works. And then after they do the 2 weeks and they get the baseline, then they go out and they do a 3-week internship. And it's usually from 8 to 3, Monday through Friday. And 34 students get to participate in that. So as a total, we had 152 students actually go out and do internships. The first 2, the Lennar and the working with the elementary school, was actually paid positions this year for our students. So that was a really nice opportunity. The neat thing about the Civic Summer one is we've worked it out where students actually get school credits. So they get high school credits for going out and participating in that program.
I'm going to add really quick to because we were so successful with the summer learning program internship, some of those students have been invited to return and are working in our after school expanded learning programs ongoing throughout this school year. So that is another way that we've been able to sustain that partnership as well.
Cool. Thank you.
And I guess we hand it back to Jessica now.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing, and worth noting that that's a win-win, since we all know that there are huge staffing shortages. So both supporting student growth and learning opportunities and meeting the needs of the younger students. So I want to start out first. One of the things that makes summers unique is it voluntary. And so as a TA provider for school districts, the main question I was getting is, how do I get students to actively participate in voluntary programs? And so first, I want to start with Sandra, just to hear from her about what interested her, like what excited you or interested you to come to a summer program when you didn't have to.
Sorry, the bell rung. But something that really interested me was just trying out something new. Since the internship I did was with Anthem Blue Cross, it is a huge company. It did intimidate me, but like the challenge did excite me. And having like a great support group, like my mom and my teachers, definitely did help. But it was voluntary, but like, you know, a good challenge doesn't hurt anybody.
Well said. I would love to hear from each of the districts, maybe one person, just maybe 2 or 3 things, like what either communication, messaging, or incentive strategies have you found to be successful to, you know, get high school students to participate regularly in voluntary programs?
I can start if you don't mind. One of the things that we did, of course, we reached out and we communicated with our middle school feeder schools, and we created flyers, and we worked with their counseling department, and we shared with them, and they helped us to recruit number one, the incoming freshmen that wanted to be part of the academy, the engineering academy or the biomed academy. So we started working with them in the spring. Again, we started this right at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. So it was very hard recruiting for pathways in 2020 because we didn't have that face-to-face communication like we had in normal years. But we did our best. We did it via social media. As I mentioned, we created the flyers and sent those out to all our feeder schools. We posted it on our website. We also tried to reach out to the parents to let them know that there would be an opportunity for a summer bridge program for their students going into high school. And that's one of the things that we wanted to do as well. We wanted to make it fun, and we also wanted, one of the other benefits from it was those students were way ahead of the other students that did not go through the summer program. They already knew our LMS, they already had their passwords, they already knew Google, how to do Google Meets and all those good things that they learned when they were in the summer program. So it was a benefit.
It provided that foundation for the school year. Kristen, can you share 1 or 2 things that you've seen work with your high school students to get them to the programs and interested?
Sure. So I'll dovetail off of Dwayne, because we did something, and we have used all of those practices in the past. Something unique that we did this past summer with our targeted student populations. If you are going after foster homeless youth, for example, their parents are not checking social media, and they don't have computers, and many of them don't have cell phones to get text messages. So all of our traditional means of reaching out, we started over, if you will. Our African-American families told us, we started an African-American student advisory group this last year specifically for CTE. And they told us, you need to reach out to our parents and our families. Just telling high school students, they said, we won't do it, right? I mean, they were very honest. And so we started to meet with parent groups twice a week at night online to give them all the various opportunities we were going to have during summer. And I will just tell you, because it happened more often, is that a parent wasn't muted and the parent would look over at their child and say, you will be doing this summer, right? Like, it wasn't an option, but we went directly for African-American families. It was directly going to parents, families, adults within that home to help recruit them. But all of ours were very special and unique for our targeted internships.
I'll kind of jump in and piggyback off that if that's okay. I saw that Julie put paid internships in the chat, and so money talks for one thing, but social pressure, that's another amazing thing that works with high school youth. So when we were offering our enrichment, those were choice activities. You get to choose what you want to go to, and if it wasn't engaging, they didn't return. But for the most part, we had students who showed up the first day, and because we allowed the teachers to select what they were passionate about and what drove them and something that they were motivated to be there, we had students who brought a friend the next day. Like, oh, is the enrollment for this closed, or can I bring my neighbor? Can I bring my buddy? And then we had students who maybe came the first week of programs, and we had students who asked if a course could be continued. There's several that we ended up extending the length of them because students were enjoying their time there. And then we also had some that got so full we had to add additional sections, or we had students who enrolled in maybe a morning class and then decided to stay on for the afternoon. And a lot of it was just peer-to-peer conversations about what was happening. Sometimes it was that teacher reaching out directly to the students and saying, hey, I'm teaching this class and I would really love to see you here because this is something we were talking about in distance learning that we didn't get to do in person, or whatever the case may be. And so that whole socialization piece, I think especially this summer, our students were starved for that. And so the graphic that I showed didn't have the full numbers because if a student attended multiple sessions, we only counted them once, but we ended up having approximately 10,000 students who didn't need daycare. They're old enough, right, that they don't have to be there for daycare, but they chose to be on our campuses engaged in an activity. And so I think that speaks to that need for connection as well.
Thank you. And one thing I heard there was also some more flexibility with when and how kids show up. And that's something that we saw across the board for elementary, and with this flexible funding where attendance was slightly less rigid in a way. So that can really expand things for both the educators themselves and kids. So one, I want to just plug, we are going to put a survey in the chat. So I'm going to say it now so you can do it while you're listening to our speakers. And then we have only about 6 minutes, and I want to hear on this question from everyone. So I want to look forward now. So this was a different summer than summers past. I'd love to hear from each district, and feel free to have more than one speaker. Just be aware of time, that we only have 6 minutes. What lessons did you learn, or changes are you thinking about as you plan for the next summer? And why don't we start with Elk Grove, and then we'll reverse engineer it.
So plans for next year, I'm thinking that it was successful what we did, and I really loved the model where teachers were teaching what they were passionate about and students were able to connect with the school and the teachers. And so Erin actually runs all of this, and who's an expert at it and does an amazing job, I will say. I just think that I would imagine that continues. And I loved seeing it not just being remediation. I mean, education should be fun. And so I think by bringing this back to the table, hopefully it continues when funding isn't as good as it is right now. And the internships too. I think they will continue to expand and grow, and they've been very successful in the past. And of course, with the education where student opportunities are there, I think it'll be really good. So Erin, did you want to add anything to that? Okay.
Antelope Valley, what are you guys what lessons learned are you taking into next summer, or changes that you're thinking about?
I think a couple things. One is that what we learned in looking at this is that there's a lot of duplication of efforts in the community and with education. And a lot of times educators are siloed, and we heard some great practices today. You know, there's a leadership academy with the city of Palmdale in the summer, a youth leadership academy. There is NASA's putting on a summer bridge program for math, and we were doing that. And so to be more intentional about having a broader lens and including more people with expertise in different areas, that it's not only coming from the education community, but how do we kind of blend these models of summer programs or expanded learning programs for kids to be more inclusive and also have more experts.
And to just elaborate to what Betsy said, one of the other things that we got out of it, this is we just had our second year with the program, is flexibility. The students really wanted to learn, and we reached out, as was mentioned previously, we reached out to the parents when we set up our blended model. We asked them how many days a week. Remember, we're in a pandemic. How many days would you like for your child to be in person? And how often, you know, on a Zoom call. So we worked that out. The students, once we got rolling, the students in the post survey, they wanted more in-person time. And the other thing that we've learned is through Betsy's leadership, we were able to fund that through CTE, which means we weren't using the district model for summer school. We were able to have office hours late in the afternoon like the parents wanted, because we were able to set that up with our teachers. So that was very, very helpful as well.
I love that you touched upon really rethinking the times of days and just this rigid school schedules that we've had up to now. So that's a great point. Kristen, I'd love to hear how you guys are thinking next summer, what you're taking into that.
So I'll say everything that my partners at Elk Grove and Antelope Valley have talked about, but I think I will accentuate the fact that we need to have students at the table when we are making decisions. And so if that is not a practice that you currently have in your district, then I would tell you that you're missing a valuable voice at the table. Our students are incredible, and they are amazing individuals with great ideas and things that we don't think about as adults, because we are siloed many times in our work and we're very narrowly focused in our work. So I would implore you, if you don't already, to include a student voice as you're trying to make decisions about program offerings and expansion.
That is a great way to end. First, I just want to plug again the survey, because whatever topics we did not hit upon today, like we did not get to talk about how do you manage hundreds of partnerships that Fresno had? How do you staff when there's a staffing shortage? So we'd love to hear back from you on what topics are the most important, so we could be really learning alongside each other. So I just want to thank everyone for their time. And I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say or add at the end, but I just want to say thank you. And this is only the beginning of these conversations. And we have so much gratitude for everyone that showed up, and particularly the panelists who are doing so much amazing work on behalf of our students.
Yeah, and I would just add my gratitude to you, Jessica. The report is fabulous. If you haven't read it, please read it. And I think we have a lot of collective work to do in terms of extending these opportunities to high schoolers at the scale we should. And you've given everyone such inspirational elements to chew on and ideas to implement. So grateful to be inspired every day by every one of you. So thank you for letting me be part of this. Appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon, and we'll be in touch with all the materials and all the recordings. More to come.